What's going on YouTube? Bacon here bringing you another video. This one gonna be my week 2 match for the VPL. This week we're playing against Sammi, aka SwiftShock, the coach of the Gerudo Valley Garchomps. Sammi was in season 1 of the VPL, and she was actually one of the semi-finalists from that year along with myself. So we tied for 3rd place that year. She's a very, very good battler for sure, and I think she drafted probably the best team in the league in my opinion. The combination of just Venusaur, Rotom Wash, Heatran, and Latios alone is really, really scary. I think she had some really good speed tiers, great utility mons, and just really a threatening team overall, and pretty difficult for my team to deal with. Coming into this week, we're both 1-0, looking to keep it up. Obviously, an important division game going forward now that playoffs tiebreaker is based first on division record, then by head-to-head. So definitely a win that I want to pick up for sure early in the season. Last season I actually started out with a loss in my first week, and then it was kind of, I think I lost as well in my 4th week to John, if I'm not mistaken. So kind of a rough start to last season that I don't want to repeat. I just want 1 year where I'm not struggling to make my way into playoffs, because I know I can play well in playoffs if I make it, but I really just want 1 year where I'm like comfortably, you know, out in front to make playoffs. So I want to pick up as many early season wins here as I can, no matter who I'm playing against, and Sammy's definitely a good kind of early barometer here in this season. So getting into the matchup here, Sammy's team is comprised of Heatran, Rotom Wash, Zygarde 10%, Mienshao, Whimsicott, Caracosta, Mega Venusaur, Latios, Scrafty, Mudsdale, and Frostlass. Her Z users are Heatran, Whimsicott, and Latios. So I was looking at the matchup, pretty sure I was going to see Heatran, Rotom Wash, Mega Venusaur, and Latios. All 4 of those just make way too much sense for me. It's too difficult for my team to break through the combination of Heatran, Wash, and Venusaur, and then Latios just applies a ton of offensive pressure to my team. It outspeeds everything naturally, bar my Tornadus, and it's not even affected by sticky webs if I happen to bring that. So those 4 just made absolutely a ton of sense to me. After that, she has a couple options. One of her fighting types I could see coming, like Mienshao or Scrafty. Mienshao maybe more so than Scrafty, just because you can run like a Choice Scarf variant to help deal with my Victini, things like that. I mean, it doesn't need to be Choice Scarf to outspeed Victini, but if I'm thinking Scarf Victini, which I am, Scarf Mienshao makes a good bit of sense versus me. And can also, a Scarf Mienshao would also outspeed my Tornadus and be able to hit that thing with a Rock Slide. Won't OHKO me from full, but if I'm chipped down a little bit, that can be a threat later in the game. So I was thinking Mienshao had some potential to come. Mudsdale I thought had some potential to come as a stealth rocker to alleviate the burden from Heatran. Mudsdale's also a decent physical check to things like Buzzwole and Victini. It doesn't take hits particularly well, but after it gets the defense boost, if she's running like a 50% berry plus the stamina, she might be able to get some health back and take on things like my Victini and my Buzzwole. So I was thinking that had some potential. It's also a decent check to my Mega Aggron as well, but not the best bring, but also I thought like had made some sense versus me. And then the other thing that I thought could potentially come was the Zygarde. Obviously, Zygarde's a huge threat with 1,000 arrows, even though it's just Zygarde 10%. 1,000 arrows is not easy to switch into in general. I happen to have a great switch-in Buzzwole on my team, but most teams don't have great switch-ins to banded 1,000 arrows from Zygardes. Definitely still a threat in this match for sure, and the extreme speed priority would be nice to pick off things like a Belly Drum variant of Slurpuff or things like that. So yeah. Then getting into my team builder here, I brought Buzzwole here, Bane the Buzzwole coming in with leftovers, Substitute, Bulk Up, Leech Life, and Drain Punch, running close to max HP, max speed, Impish Nature. I decided to creep Modest Heatran as opposed to creeping Timid Heatran. I don't think you'd run Timid Heatran versus me, given that the Buzzwole naturally outspeeds anyways. It's not really like anything for her to creep with Timid Heatran, so I decided to just bring myself down to Modest, and what that does, I'm running Impish, but to creep Modest Heatran. And what that allows me to do is get a little bit of extra bulk out of it, which is valuable to me because it guarantees that I live 2 Choice Banded Outrages from a Zygarde after Stealth Rocks, which I would not have guaranteed otherwise without the Impish Nature. The idea behind the Buzzwole is I can sub up on a lot of her team. I can sub up on Mienshao, can sub up on Choice Lock Zygarde, I can sub up on Mudsdale, I can sub up on Scrafty, and I'm a good defensive check to all those things as well, assuming they don't go for like a Toxic on me. So I can come in on all those things and substitute up, and then just start punishing her team a little bit. Her kind of best switch-ins after I go for a substitute are things like Mega Venusaur and Rotom Wash, which still don't really appreciate taking Leech Lives, especially if I start bulking up as well. She could potentially go Whimsicott if she's got Encore, but even that's kind of risky, because if I'm like a more offensive variant of Buzzwole and I'm just spamming Leech Life, that's going to do some pretty good damage to Whimsicott. So substitute, I think it's just really valuable in this matchup to ease my predictions on switch-ins, and then also give me a little bit of protection to start chipping down things like the Venusaur and the Rotom, which otherwise are kind of difficult for my team to break through. Next up here, we've got Roserade, not a waifu. Roserade coming in here with Black Sludge, Technician, Spikes, Giga Drain, Sludge Bomb, and HP Ground. Dual Stab is just good to hit her team. Things like Rotom and Whimsicott do not appreciate the Giga Drain Sludge Bomb combination. This is a great switch into Sub-Seed variants of Whimsicott. If she's not carrying Psychic, this is a good switch into pretty much any variant of Whimsicott that's not carrying Psychic. But I definitely have to watch out for that during the match. Spikes are just really nice to pressure her defensive core. Obviously, they don't hit the Rotom Wash, but being able to pressure Heatran and Mega Venusaur upon switch-in with Spikes up would be really good for me over the course of the match. And even more, some of our more offensive mons, like the Zygarde, the Mienshao, won't appreciate coming in on Spikes every time they switch in. And HP Ground's there specifically to hit the Heatran. Heatran is a huge threat to my team. Vaporeon's really my only good Heatran response on the team. So HP Ground means that I don't necessarily have to switch out against that thing with my Roserade, unless I'm really thinking that she'd be Choice Scarf for some reason. I don't think Choice Scarf Heatran would be a great ring versus me. I feel like Spadef Bulky or like a more offensive Z move variant, like Z Bloom Doom, or Z Solar Beam rather, to hit the Vaporeon would make a lot of sense. So I don't think she'd be running Scarf Heatran. HP Ground will OHKO from full offensive variants of Heatran, and defensive variants of Heatran, like Max Spadef Heatran, still takes like 75-80% from HP Ground. So either way, I can punish her for trying to get up Stealth Rocks, or if she's offensive, I can just blow that thing out of the water with HP Ground, which would be amazing for me in the long run. Next up here, we've got Birdbrain the Tornadus running Flynium Z Tornadus with Taunt, U-Turn, Defog, and Hurricane. I've got enough speed to outspeed Whimsicott, which also allows me to outspeed a +1 Scrafty if she's like a DD variant of Scrafty. I can always switch in on that thing. The Z move allows me to take knockoff a little bit better, and since I outspeeded on the following turn, I can just go for Hurricane or Z Hurricane and knock that thing out, depending on how risky I'm feeling. Taunts is there to prevent her from going for Stealth Rocks, because I do have the Tornadus and the Victini. I can't allow her to get up Stealth Rocks with something like Mudsdale or Heatran, for example. I think she might have had other Stealth Rockers, I can't remember actually off the top of my head, but I definitely don't want her getting rocks up this game, because they punish those things way too hard. And I don't want to have to defog, because I do want to get my Spikes up and my own Stealth Rocks up, so... Taunt, I felt like was just kind of a good play on Tornadus. It also prevents things like Latios from Calm-Minding up on me or recovering or whatever. I can prevent that from happening. U-Turn is just a really good initiative move, predicting switches into Heatran, predicting switches into Rotom Wash. I can get some great momentum off on those mons. And then Defog is there. It's just kind of, if she does get up Stealth Rocks, I can at least remove them at some point in the game. I definitely want to keep my Victini healthy in the back if at all possible. And Tornadus as well really appreciates Stealth Rocks being off the field, so it can be a better switch into things like Whimsicott and the Venusaur. Next up here is an unfortunately not nicknamed Mega Aggron. Big L, forgot to nickname Mega Aggron this week. Won't let it happen again. We got Stealth Rock, Mega Aggron, Toxic, Heavy Slam, and Protect, running max HP, max Spadef, but with an Impish nature. What this allows me to do is take hits better from things like Mudsdale, Scrafty, Mienshao, Zygarde. I get a lot of mileage out of putting the nature in my Vizdef than in my Spadef. And I feel like there's definitely a situation in this game where I could see myself deciding not to switch out on something like a Zygarde, and just saying, well, you know what, I'm just going to tank the hit and go for Heavy Slam, because Choice Band, Adamant, 1,000 Arrows from Zygarde, I believe, does something like 40% to this Mega Aggron spread, so that's not a lot of damage, especially considering I can Wish Up with Vaporeon later in the game, and Heavy Slam is a roll to OHKO back, and after Spike, I think it's guaranteed OHKO, if I'm not mistaken, on the Zygarde, so if I can get rid of that thing, great. If I'm not feeling so aggressive, I can always go into my Buzzwole anyways to take the 1,000 Arrows. But yeah, the Mega Aggron here just, I think, works really well in this match. Getting up Stealth Rocks is obviously really nice to pressure her defensive mons, but the Toxic Protect combination is amazing this game. If I can get a Toxic off on the Rotom Wash, that'll be super key in getting her team chip down. Rotom Wash is a huge defensive threat to this team because I have things like the Victini, I have the Vaporeon, I have the Buzzwole, I have the Tornadus. Getting that thing chipped at all is going to be super, super important in this match. And Protect not only allows me to get that thing chipped a little bit further by going for Protect to waste turns, but also it allows me to scout out her potential choice users, things like Mienshao going for U-turn or High Jump Kick. High Jump Kick in particular would be nice to catch with a Protect, and also the Zygarde as well. If it's choice locked, I can potentially Protect up on that, scout out what it's going to go for, make sure if she is going for 1,000 arrows, I can go out to my Buzzwole or not risk it on like an Outrage or something. So yeah, that's the idea behind the Mega Aggron. Next up here is Grace the Vaporeon. Not a super huge fan of Vaporeon's matchup in this instance, but I felt like it was kind of necessary to bring her anyways. Running leftovers, Scald, Wish, Protect, and Heal Bell, sorry. On this set. Running max HP, max Fizz Def, because you really don't need to invest too much in Vaporeon's Spadef unless you're taking on a very specific threat with it. So in this case, just running max Fizz Def Vaporeon lets it double as a little bit of a Zygarde answer, a little bit of a Mienshao answer, a little bit of a Scrafty answer. Not as well as the Buzzwole does that job, but at least as a secondary check if the Buzzwole's gone later in the match. But like I mentioned, not a huge fan of Vaporeon's matchup here. She can get pretty much free into her Whimsicott, into her Mega Venusaur, into her Rotom Wash on Vaporeon, which is kind of unfortunate for me. But I felt like I just had to bring it. I didn't have any other good switch-ins to the Heatran, or at least not ones that I wanted to bring. So I felt like Vaporeon was kind of the best of a bad scenario with the Heatran. So at least have a defensive check to that thing. If I find out she's offensive Heatran, I'm definitely going to scout for the Z-Grass, either by going for Protect or doubling out into something like my Tornadus. Because I'm thinking if she doesn't have the Z-Grass, she'll switch out into her Mega Venusaur or her Whimsicott on my Vaporeon, doubling out into Tornadus would catch those. Or if she does have the Z-Grass, I think she'll go for it, and my Vaporeon obviously is not going to take that as well as my Tornadus would, so that's kind of the idea behind the Heatran. Heal Bell is really nice to protect me from status if my Buzzwole gets toxic, if my Aggron gets burned, things like that. It would just be really nice to get rid of the potential status with. Last up here, we've got V's up the Victini, going with Choice Scarf Victini this week. U-turn, Dazzling Gleam, Psychic, and Final Gambit. Running quite a bit of HP. We're actually only creeping Timid Heatran. I decided to go for Timid Heatran with this Victini just because it allowed me to get enough HP that a Final Gambit will KO Mudsdale, Rotom Wash, Heatran, Venusaur, Latios, all that jazz will die to a Final Gambit, which is really nice for me. Because her defensive core is kind of difficult for me to break through, I don't really mind trading Victini for one of those Mons. Really, any of her core 4 getting dead with the Victini would be really nice, and I don't think she'd risk the Venusaur versus me anyways, which is kind of the least valuable of the ones to remove. If I can't get rid of like specifically Rotom or Heatran with a Final Gambit, that'll be super valuable for me in the long run. Otherwise, if I'm not feeling so inclined to go for Final Gambit, U-turn's decent to pressure her team. It'll still do like 40% or so to Latios, even though I'm running a Timid nature. Dazzling Gleam could potentially pick up like a late game sweep. It's a decent offensive check to like +1 Scrafty, or Combine, maybe not Combine Latios, but Latios itself still takes about 60-70% I think from Dazzling Gleam. So it's still a decent damage output move. It can also hit the Mienshao and the Zygarde as well. And then Psychic is there mostly to pressure the Mega Venusaur. Alright. So without further ado, let's get into the matchup here. As you can see, she did bring the core 4, Venusaur, Rotom, Heatran, and Lati, plus Whimsicott and Zygarde in this instance. That's fine with me. I'm actually rather happy that Zygarde is here instead of something like Mienshao, because Mienshao can go for U-turn, predicting switch-ins to things like my Tornadus and my Buzzwole. Zygarde does not have that luxury, so she'd have to hard double predicting my Buzzwole if that scenario arises, which is a lot more difficult just mentally of a play to make, is to hard double out of something rather than just say, oh, I'll click U-turn, see what he wants to do. She would have to go hard for a double into like Latios predicting my Buzzwole or something like that, which is risky because I could just go out into my Tornadus, expecting the 1,000 arrows, being able to live it, going for U-turn. I could go out into my Vaporeon, which could potentially have Roar, or Ice Beam, or something like that. So it's a little bit harder of a play for her to make than like a U-turn on Mienshao would be. Also, Scarf Mienshao is kind of annoying versus me, just because it could potentially rock slide through me if like just my Tornadus and Victini are basically hanging around at the end of the game, maybe Rose Raid or something. If those are the only mons that are left, Scarf Rock Slide Sweep on the other end could be fairly problematic. So definitely glad to see the dog over the Mienshao here. Anyways, just looking at the lead matchup here, I'm predicting her to either lead with the Heatran or the Rotom Wash. In a prep match, Jeff led with Rotom Wash as I led with my Tornadus. I felt like Tornadus is quote-unquote no drawback here because I can either just U-turn out or taunt the Heatran. But in the long run, I elected to run with lead Rose Raid here, hard predicting the Rotom Wash lead. Rotom Wash is a great lead versus my team. Like, if you look at my team, the only thing that really punishes a Rotom Wash lead is the Rose Raid. So I felt like I kind of had to lead with Rose Raid here. It gives me a ton of momentum if she does lead with Rotom Wash right off the bat. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. We're going to throw out the Rose Raid here as we get started, and she does lead with the Rotom Wash. So we make the right prediction there, and that is a free spike for me. She should not stay in here to eat a Giga Drain if I'm offensive. Like, Leaf Storm will knock her out. So I'm going to throw off a spike here. That's going to be great in the long run to pressure this Heatran and this Venusaur over the course of the match. It'll also chip down the Whimsicott and the Zygarde as well. And as long as I can prevent her from getting up Stealth Rocks, that spike is going to probably be there to stay unless she defogs it. So I'm going to make a kind of aggressive play on the second turn here and go right for the Hidden Power Ground. Like I mentioned, a careful kind of, gonna pause it real quick, or a calm variant of Heatran, like a max Spadef, max HP type of Heatran, would have lived that and potentially been able to throw off a fire type move to do a lot of damage or knock me out. And Scarf Heatran would have been able to knock me out as well, but I was not expecting her to run Scarf Heatran here. I don't think that made a whole lot of sense versus me in the long run. I think she'd either run like offensive Z Heatran or Spadef Heatran, and if it was Spadef Heatran, I was expecting her to go for Stealth Rocks there and at least get a big punish off with HP Ground, do 75-80% to that thing, make sure it can't come in safely on like my Victini later in the game. But just being able to knock out the Heatran second turn is amazing for me. Like I mentioned, it's really difficult for me to break through that core 3 up on the top row there. So getting rid of the Heatran early is super, super nice for me. Even though I don't have a fire move on anything on this team, that thing, like, its natural defensive typing is just really difficult for my team to deal with. So very, very glad to be rid of that thing. It also means she's not going to have Stealth Rocks up this match, which means if anybody is defogging, it's going to be her, which is just great for my team in general. Anyway, she goes out into Venusaur here after I knock out the Heatran. I kind of don't want to take any damage on my Rose Raid at this point in the match, especially because I think I'm going to have to come in pretty frequently on the Whimsicott and the Rotom Wash. Still very valuable to me, so I'm just going to go out into my Tornadus here. There's not a whole lot she can do to me, bar like Sleep Powder, which I don't think you'd go for on a grass type. So she goes for Knockoff, which is actually kind of the best case scenario for me because it reveals that I'm actually Z Tornadus, so she's probably more inclined to switch out knowing that I'm Z. So I'm just going to U-turn here, take advantage of the Rotom Wash coming in. She really didn't have any other good switch-ins. Everything else was going to drop to a Z move. So Rotom Wash was really her only viable switch-in, which freely gets me back out into my Rose Raid. Here I've got a couple options. I could spike up again, but I don't want her to stay in and defog, predicting me to spike again or defog with anything else on her team. So I'm just going to throw off a Sledge Bomb here, try and deny the Latios switch in as much as possible, and actually do some pretty good damage there. It does look like an offensive variant of Latios, but getting off some really nice damage there on the Latios, and also was potentially going to snag a poison there. And I can go right out into my Aggron on the Latios. I really don't care what she goes for here. She does go for Psychic. It looks like a damage boosting variant. It's either Soul Dew or Choice Specs. I'm thinking more so Soul Dew because I think it's like a mid-roll on Soul Dew to do that much to my Aggron. But I can pretty freely stay in here, get my Mega off, and throw off a Toxic. Toxic is just really nice there because it punishes the Latios if she stays in, but it also punishes the Rotom upon switch-in. I guess Venusaur was a potential switch-in there, but because I have Spike Up, I felt like Rotom was the more likely swap. And getting a Toxic off on that thing is really, really nice for me. Because, as I mentioned at the beginning of this game, I can just go for Protect here and start to stall out this Rotom a little bit. Any chip damage on this thing is good for my Victini in the back. It's good for my Vaporeon. It's really good for my whole team. It's good for my Tornadus, my Buzzwole. Like, any chip on this thing is amazing. So Toxic is going to start to wear this thing down a little bit. She goes for Will-O-Wisp there. I don't want to take a burn on my Aggron this early in the match, and Vaporeon is essentially useless now that the Heatran is gone. So I don't mind her going for Volt Switch here, doing a little bit of damage to my Vaporeon, because I really just want to deny the Latios to come in for free. I feel like she'd be less inclined to go out into Latios than she would like Whimsicott or Venusaur on my Vaporeon. Fearing Ice Beam, fearing Roar, whatever, if she's like a Calm Mind variant of Latios. I felt like going to Vaporeon kind of denied that thing more than going Roserade did. So she actually makes a good play here. Goes for the taunt as I try to wish up my Mega Aggron. Keeping Mega Aggron healthy is super important for this match, and I'm willing to sack off the Vaporeon if I have to do it. So I'm just going to go for Wish there. She goes for taunt. Very nice play. And I'm going to go out into my Tornadus here. Not really sure what she wants to go for yet with this Whimsicott. I want to see a little bit more of it set. But she goes for Light Screen here. I'm like, oh, that's not so great. And what's double not so great is that she gets a Sun Spore off on my Tornadus here as I miss a Hurricane. I don't think Hurricane would have knocked out through Light Screen there, but it would have done some pretty nice damage. And now I have eaten the Sun Spore as well, which is super unfortunate. I really should have thought about that play a little bit harder, because she did run Stun Spore last week to paralyze Mega Alakazam. Here I'm just going to stay in with my Tornadus and go for Hurricane in case she wants to try and pressure me with Moonblast or anything crazy like that behind the Light Screen. I do miss another Hurricane, unfortunately, but it wouldn't have done too much to the Rotom through the screen. Here, though, I have kind of a rare opportunity where I can just get a slow U-turn off of my Tornadus here. I don't want to let her gain any momentum by going for Volt Switch, and I gain a ton of momentum myself by going for a slow U-turn here. Regenerator is going to heal up my Tornadus pretty well anyways. Getting the slow U-turn off on that Latios is going to put it in range of a U-turn for my Victini. Since I am Choice Scarf Victini and I know that she's damage boosting of some sort on her Latios, this is a free U-turn for me. I have to get rid of the Latios, which is really her last big offensive threat, or I U-turn out on a potential Rotom switch in, which she does go for. So wasting off turns Light Screen here is very nice for me, and I can get right back out into my Roserade here. I think I calced without Light Screen here that Giga Drain would knock out the Latios, so I end up making actually the wrong play and go for Giga Drain over Sludge Bomb here. But I don't get punished too hard as she goes out into the Mega Venusaur. Sludge Bomb obviously would have been pretty nice there to do a little bit more than 3%, but you know, it is what it is. I'm going to get a little aggressive here and go for a Spike, predicting her to potentially double out into something like her Rotom Wash to catch my Tornadus, but she just goes for knockoff there. Unfortunately, removing the Black Sludge from my Roserade. Maybe a play that I probably didn't have to make there, but getting the extra couple of spikes up is really going to pressure her to defog later, and if she doesn't defog, I'm going to be racking up even more chip on her team. So here I'm going to go out into Tornadus, see what she wants to do. She goes for the Sludge Bomb. Like I mentioned at the beginning, or actually I don't think I mentioned at the beginning of this, I may have to PP stall this Mega Venusaur, and you can bet your butt I'm going to do it if I have to. So I don't have like great ways to pivot around this Venusaur, and she's making some very good predictions with the Sludge Bomb and the Leech Seed here. She's making some very good plays to get her Venusaur back up to a lot of health. And I don't have like a good way to pressure this thing right now because my Tornadus is paralyzed. So I'm just going to keep switching around here. I just want to get the Vaporeon in on a play where I don't think she's going to be going for knockoff or Giga Drain. So I'm really kind of playing around with this. I've lost a good bit of health off my Roserade, which is a little unfortunate. But now I can get into Vaporeon without having to take a knockoff or a Giga Drain. I figured she'd go for Sludge Bomb. And I don't mind my Vaporeon getting poisoned, because what I've come in here to do is Heal Bell. Getting rid of that paralysis on my Tornadus is imperative to me winning this game. So I'm absolutely going to do that. I don't care if she has Giga Drain. It's not going to knock me out from this range. And I don't mind sacking off the Vaporeon, like I mentioned, because the Heatran's gone. Its job is basically non-existent now. Anyways, she's got the Rotom Wash in here. She's got a couple options. I've been protecting up to Toxic Solve this thing a lot, but I don't know if she'd predict that, so I just go for Protect here with my Vaporeon. Get a little bit more chip off on this Rotom Wash. You can see it's actually starting to get a little bit low. After this turn, I believe it's going to be at 69%. I think 69. Yeah, nice. So that Rotom's at 69% now, and I can just stay in here with my Vaporeon again. If she wants to defog, that's fine with me. She's going to be taking a ton of toxic damage. Otherwise, I can just stay in here and click Wish. What Wish does is allows me to get my Mega Aggron back up to full, which is super important for dealing with this Latios. Scald, I don't think would have killed the Latios from this range, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not like I could have denied that thing from switching in anyways. So I felt like Wish was the better play there. Gets my Mega Aggron in, and you can see I'm a little bit worn down here, but that Wish is going to get me right back up to full as she goes for Recover. Recover's a little bit unfortunate, but I'm willing to trade it for the extra HP on my Aggron here. It's going to be really difficult for her to break through this thing as long as I keep it healthy, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. I've now seen Psychic and Recover on this thing, so I'm definitely thinking it's a Calm Mind variant of Latios. But here I'm just going to throw off Heavy Slam. Heavy Slam's going to do big damage, should knock out the Latios from this range, but it's also going to do any chip on the Rotom is good chip at this point in the match, is what I'm thinking. Like, get a little bit more chip damage off on the Rotom. Here I could have scouted with a Protect. I don't really know why I decided not to. Yeah, I'm actually not sure why I decided not to Protect there. Maybe I didn't want her to get in Zygarde for free or something, but probably should have protected there to get some extra chip off on the Rotom, but it's not a huge deal. I could just go for Stealth Rocks here. Stealth Rocks is going to further pressure the Rotom and the Latios upon switch-in. Going to really be pressuring that Venusaur now upon switch-in. You can see I got a ton of hazards damage off on this Whimsicott, but she made a really good double here going to the Whimsicott, predicting the Tornadus, I think, because she's going to know that I'm fearful of the Stun Spore, and if she does have Defog, she can just go for that as well, get rid of all these hazards, and even though she'd be trading it for the Whimsicott, that's not such a huge problem for her in the long run. But she goes for Stun Spore here as I catch that with my Roserade, and then goes for Light Screen on the following turn. What did I do this turn? I can't really remember. I did go for Sludge Bomb. Okay, so we're able to knock out the Whimsicott here with a Sludge Bomb. Really nice to have that thing gone just because she can't Stun Spore my Victini, she can't Stun Spore my Tornadus anymore, which is really, really good for me. And now the Latios is going to come out here. I have to switch out here. I'd still kind of want to save my Roserade for that Rotom Wash in the back in case it starts to become problematic. And Aggron's healthy enough that it should be able to take on this Latios from the range that it's at. As she actually turns out to be Defog Latios, so much less of a threat than I originally anticipated with the Latios. I was thinking like Calm Mind Z move could be very problematic because Calm Mind Z Devastating Z Draco still does like at +1. I think it still does over half to Aggron, so definitely a big threat. But because she went for Defog there, I'm just going to get my Stealth Rocks back up. I really want to pressure her switch-ins with the Rotom and the Venusaur as much as possible, and keeping that Latios low is good for me as well. If it's closer to U-turn range with my Victini or my Tornadus, that's really good for me. Here I am going to make the Protect play on the Rotom Wash just to get it chipped down a little bit more as she goes for the Pain Split. So it turns out Pain Split is her last move. Presumably she's got Hydro Pump, but just hasn't had a reason to click it. So she goes for Pain Split. And I obviously don't want her to take a bunch of HP from my Aggron here, so I'm going to just go into my Roserade. If she Pain Splits again, it's basically a net neutral, and if she goes for Volt Switch as she does, Roserade's still going to take it pretty well. I suppose I could have gone into Vaporeon there and sacked it off to get momentum as she went for Volt Switch, but this plays fine for me as well. But she's able to get out into her Zydog here, so I was actually kind of surprised she didn't go back into the Latios here, but she goes out into Zydog, which is a free Buzzwole for me. Like I mentioned, I do live 2 Choice Band Outrages after Stealth Rocks, and Stealth Rocks aren't even up. But she goes for 1,000 arrows, and even though that may not look like it, that looks like Choice Band damage, people. So Bane eating that up. Free substitute here for my Buzzwole, as she has to switch out of her Zygarde here and go into the Mega Venusaur. So now I'm going to start to be able to really pressure her team with Leech Life. Because I've just subbed up, I'd like to get my Bane back up to a little bit more health so I can take on the Zygarde a little bit better. But here I believe I'm just going to go for a Leech Life, start to chip down this Venusaur. I still don't know what its last move is. I've seen Leech Seed, I've seen Sludge Bomb, and I've seen Knockoff. Still don't know what the last move is on the Venusaur yet. So I'm going to go for Leech Life here as she reveals the Synthesis, which is not bad for me because it means she doesn't have Giga Drain or anything like that, but it's also not great because I'm not going to just be able to spam Leech Life. I'm going to have to bulk up here with my Buzzwole, which is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go for bulk up with my Buzzwole here so I can start pressuring this Venusaur a little bit better. I'm going to be doing about 40% with a Leech Life and healing myself up pretty considerably with that plus Leftovers recovery, so I don't mind wasting off a couple substitutes here. I'm basically at full health right now, and after one substitute and then a Leech Life, I'll be basically back up to full health. So I don't have a huge problem here going for substitute in case she wants to choke and go for Leech Seed here. But she's just gonna spam Sludge Bomb at me, which is fine by me. I'm perfectly willing to trade a bunch of damage on my Buzzwole for this Venusaur, or the Rotom Wash, which is really her only other viable switch into this thing. And as you can see, I'm going to be 2-hit KOing this thing with Leech Life at this range. Getting, like I mentioned, pretty much back up to full as she goes for Sludge Bomb. Unfortunately, she does get the poison off on me. If she didn't get a poison on me there, I'd be in a really, really good position. But, you know, it's Pokemon, happens. I still pressure her really, really well with Leech Life right now. This Venusaur is going to die. Latios or Zygarde is going to die upon switch in, so she pretty much has to sack off either the Venusaur or the Rotom. She elects to sack off the Rotom, which is fine with me. Getting rid of that thing means that my Vaporeon isn't pressured as much anymore. If that happens to come back on the field, I don't have to worry about my Mega Aggron getting burned or anything like that. And I don't have to worry about her Volt switching around my team anymore. She also has now lost her last flying resist, so next time I click Z Hurricane, or next time if I click Z Hurricane with my Tornadus, I'm going to get a kill. Here, I make kind of a mistake. Not a huge mistake, but I do sack off the Buzzwole here. I was going to go Mega Aggron, like I had Mega Aggron clicked, and then I deselected it to go calc something, and then for some reason I came back and just decided to sack off the Buzzwole. That was a misplay on my end, getting rid of the Buzzwole there. It would still have been pretty valuable to check the Zygarde in the back, but not a huge problem. I can just go out into my Aggron here and throw off a Heavy Slam. Heavy Slam should do pretty good damage to anything coming in, except Mega Venusaur is actually mighty heavy, so I'm not actually going to knock it out with a Heavy Slam here. And then I make a kind of a second small misplay here. I go for Heavy Slam again on the Venusaur instead of just going hard out into my Tornadus. Thought she might just sack off the Venusaur here to go out into Zydog, but she goes for another Synthesis here, and now I'm like, okay, I can't let this Venusaur get all the way back to full for free. So what I'm going to do here is go out into my Tornadus, as I'm predicting another Synthesis or maybe a Leech Seed coming out from the Venusaur. She goes for Synthesis here, and now, obviously, I do have the Z move on hand. Hold on, I'm going to pause it here. I do have the Z move on hand, obviously, and it's going to nuke something, right? Like I mentioned already, it's going to get me a KO if I go for Z Hurricane, no matter what I come in on. But, because the Venusaur is really her only small chance at winning this game, I'm predicting her to sack off either the Zygarde or the Latios, presumably the Latios, on this play. So what I'm actually going to do is just throw off a regular Hurricane, and thankfully I do hit this one. Like, missing the other two Hurricanes was not very important, but hitting this one was very important because it meant that I didn't have to U-turn out to knock out this Latios, which means I get to stay in here and claim another KO with Z Hurricane and basically lock up the game from there. So she goes out to Zygarde here. Choice Band E-Speed on a crit does not knock out my Tornadus from this range, so I'm just going to go for Z Hurricane here. Make sure I hit and knock out this Zygarde. Tornadus putting in the finest of work here, knocking out the Latios and the Zygarde, and now all she's got left is the Venusaur, which should not be able to 1v5 the rest of my team. Obviously Roserade and the Vaporeon really aren't doing anything to it, but I do have the Tornadus alive still, I do have the Victini alive still, and they should be able to pressure this Venusaur to death. What I do here is taunt to prevent her from Leech Seeding or Synthesising up. What that means is I can just start spamming Hurricane at her with my Tornadus. You see I'm out of range of a 2-hit KO there. I can just start spamming Hurricane at her with Tornadus. I do land the first one, thankfully. It does a nice chunk of damage. Unfortunately, U-turn does not kill from this range, so I'm going to have to go for another Hurricane here. But because she's taunted, it means that she can't Synthesis up, hoping for Hurricane misses. I'm just going to go for Hurricane. I do unfortunately miss again, but that's only going to affect differential here. Because she's taunted, like I mentioned, she can't heal up on me. So she's going to knock out my Tornadus here, but that allows me to freely go out into my Victini and just click Psychic to clean up the game. So it's a 4-0 victory for us. GG to Sammi. I think the big plays here were me killing that Heatran early in the match was super important because it meant I didn't have to deal with Stealth Rocks at all this game, and it made Vaporeon a lot more expendable, so I could play it a little bit more aggressively, taking Volt Switches from things like the Rotom Wash, for example. I felt like it was really valuable for a couple other big plays. Me knowing that she'd scout for the Z move with the Tornadus, even though the game was mostly in hand at that point, that pretty much locked it up, me predicting that she'd sack the Latios there and hitting that thing with a Hurricane, and then knowing that I could claim a KO after that with a Z Hurricane. So I felt like those were two of the big plays, and then the last big play I felt like was the turn where I had my paralyzed Tornadus in versus the Rotom Wash. I click U-turn as she clicked Volt Switch. Basically denying her momentum at that stage in the match was super important. Not only because she went out into the Latios, which I was able to further pressure by going for U-turn with my Victini, but I didn't let the Latios in for free on my Roserade, which it didn't turn out to be a Calm Mind variant of Latios, but Calm Mind Latios in that scenario actually could have been somewhat problematic. I believe my Aggron was a little bit chipped at that point in the match as well. So I felt like that was a really big play on my end, going for the slow U-turn with Tornadus, knowing that she was going to Volt Switch and do about 60% to me, and that I could heal it up with Regenerator. So I felt like I played this match pretty well overall, bar like sacking the Buzzwole unnecessarily. But I felt like I played pretty well overall. I'm pretty happy with how it went. Obviously, coming out with a big win here against Sammi. Sammy's a very good player. Definitely don't count her out going forward just because of this game. She's a huge threat in our division. I do expect her to make playoffs this season for sure, especially with the team that she's got and her skill. She'll be fine. It's early in the season, so no worries there for sure. Yeah, we're 2-0 now, starting off the season on the right foot. Thank you guys very much for watching if you did to this point, and I hope to see you guys all in the next video. Maybe it won't be a 50-turn game. We'll see. Alright, have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.